we go. We are now streaming on YouTube.
Yes, now.
Oh, yeah, here's Tommy. Okay, so what we saw last time in Sif Daled was that a Jew could take money and have the non-Jew be mitasek with that money, just be busy with that, to take that money and do business with it. So long as I don't tell you have to do it on Shabbos, an investment like that is, how it's invested is the choice of the non-Jew. That's correct. Is the choice of the non-Jew. It's just cash. It's just coins. So no one's going to attribute at all. There's no Maris Ayin concern because no one's going to attribute the money back to anybody. And so that's why it's okay. So the Ramah writes, V'dafka b'kahai, everyone see where we are? V'dafka b'kahai gavna, middle of Daled. I'm gonna turn your page, Michael, a few times. I'll plug ready to find it here. So Reish Mem Hey, Sif Daled. In the middle where the Ramah begins. Hey Gimel Hey Hagah. Okay, so right over here. Okay, V'dafka, right over.
It's one word?
No, so yeah, Reish Mem Hey, Daled. Boom, right there. Okay, V'dafka b'kai gavna sha'eno Yehudi nosev v'nosein lechud im hamos. That's we're talking about when the non-Jew is the only one who's dealing with the money and he's being nosein v'notein, doing his business deals with that money by himself. But if each one, they're partners in the business, and each one does their day. I mean, this is the kind of arrangement they have. It's not just simply like I'm an investor and you're the CEO, but it's a relationship where one is doing some days of the business and the other one does the other days of the business in correspondence to that. How are you? Good morning. Let me just help you find the right page here. Okay, we're in the middle over here of that third to the bottom line over there. In office. It is. If you leave it with me, I'll take it. Go on.
Thank you, sir.
All right, no worries. Okay. So, each one does their day, right? So also, then it's not okay. Then it is not an okay arrangement because now let's say the money that I give to you to invest on Saturday, not just on yeah. So let's say I give you the money and you work Saturdays. That's your day. Sorry, the non-Jew works Saturdays. That's his day, and I work a day in correspondence to that day. And so in the lead up to Saturday, it sounds like I give you some sort of money, and now he's no saving, no tain on Shabbos with that money. So it's not so much a problem of people are going to think, oh, whose cash was that? But I gave him something that he did work with it on Saturday. That I every time he does work on Saturdays, that's a shlichus. He's doing it as a messenger of myself because we co-own the business and he does his day and I do that day and that day of Shabbos is in correspondence to another day. I get profits available to me on other days because you're doing my work on Saturdays. So that, again, like we've had in the past, the idea being if there is no stipulation made at the beginning of the business, this is a prohibited situation. And even with regards to just cash being involved in this whole process, because again, that money, now everything that's being done, not just with that money, but with everything really, is done. He's doing it as my shaliach. on Shabbos. If again, it's just simply that I'm investing in in the non-Jewish owned business, and I give money. I don't tell them to do it on Shabbos. That's going to be okay.
But is that problematic? Because if he's doing it representing you, so to speak, unless you, like you said, if it's split and said, listen, I'm taking care of it on Sundays, and you're taking it, that may not be problematic. But if he if he's doing it on a Shabbat, he's representing you. Therefore, there's a problem saying, listen, the client's saying, so and so is doing business on Shabbat. What's going on here?
Right. So that's so long as there's no Mara sign concern we talked about in the past. The people will look at the situation and they'll assume that there's funny business going on here that the Jew is involved with on Shabbos.
Right.
Yes. So you have to get around that. So, yeah. That's
how do you get around that? I know you
so
told me.
Yeah. So you have to make sure you're not in a type of business arrangement where people would think that. It depends a little bit on the industry and what kind of contracts are done between the workers and it's a more complicated.
Second part of it is if the person's Jewish and doing business for the money, can he say to you, Jewish person, do it on Sunday instead of making it talk to you and say, do the business on Sunday and hold it so you're not.
Sure, why not? Because on Saturday, it's on Saturday, yeah.
Yeah.
Yud Tess in the Mishnah Berurah down below, he says, Usur, this arrangement is us that we just talked about, as I mentioned a moment ago, again, if there is a deal from the very beginning that removes the Jew, meaning the Jew never was relevant to the business on Shabbos, then such a business, when it does function on Shabbos by the hands of the non-Jew, it's fine, even though people know we're business partners. That was the arrangement from the very beginning. Okay, and the last thing the Ramah mentions here, he doesn't actually go into great depth about. He says, back up top, Yisrael sheyesh lo mashkon min ha'eno Yehudi ein lekaman siman shirin chaf hey sif bet v'gimel. What happens if a Jew has in his possession a mashkon of a non-Jew? A mashkon, anyone know what a mashkon means?
Security?
It's a pledge, yeah.
Yeah.
What did you say, Hinda?
Security.
It's a security. And imagine that you take a security, as a security, you take a business. And so I get access to all the profits of a completely, by the way, and solely owned non-Jewish business. Because we had some arrangement and he or she couldn't make the payment at the time. And so until such time as I recoup my loan to the non-Jew, I have access to the profits of her business. So it's questionable now. Am I engaged in a business now because I get everything that happens and I can open on Shabbos? But it's not my business though. But now everything that happens on Shabbos, I can benefit from. So when we get to Shin Chav Hei, we'll look at this more. But he said, if you go to Shin Chav Hei for a second, and you see there, it talks about being nosev and notain, right? Heicha deika. Where is it here? I'm just going to read for you. I know you don't have it in front of you. Sorry. In Sif Gimel there, it says, Mutar lahachlif mashkon b'Shabbat, if it's clothing, you can take that as a mashkon. V'yotzienu derech malbush, I go into his house, or his or her house, he didn't pay me back for the loan. So I'm allowed to take the mashkon. So I go to their house, I take their nice leather jacket, and that's my mashkon. I get to hold on to that until you pay me back. So I'm allowed to take it and wear it derech malbush. Okay, and it's not even talking about a non-Jew, by the way. Here it's going to be within a Jew and a Jew. Gam Yisrael mutar b'inyan zeh im haYisrael tzarich lovsho. And he says, "V'tov she'eno Yehudi yikach hamashkon atzmo." It's better if let's say, a non-Jew, does the actual taking of the, I guess, on my behalf. Okay. So, because why? That way, it shouldn't look like I'm doing business on Shabbos. It looks like I'm fulfilling all the conditions and stipulations of our agreement. One of them was I'm allowed to take a mashkon on Shabbos. That's more about taking it on Shabbos. Can you take the mashkon on Shabbos? You think, well, why would I take it on Shabbos? I could take it on Sunday or take it on Friday. But you remember, there's a halacha that says that if a person is not wealthy, well, I'll take a mashkon. But what do I have to do every day? I have to return it to them. I have to return it to them because they're poor and they need it. So it's my daily reminder to them, hey, try to get the money, but if they need the blanket, they need the jacket, they need the shirt, I have to give it back to them every day. That's what the Torah requires. This is not interpretation. It's directly in the Torah in a very clear fashion. Okay, let's go on to Sif Hey. Mutter li Yisrael litain schora le'eno Yehudi. Back in the Shulchan Aruch on top. Mutter li Yisrael litain schora le'eno Yehudi limkor im katzatz lo sachar. It is permissible for a Jew to give merchandise to a non-Jew to sell, as long as he makes im katzatz, meaning he tells them, you make sure to sell 10 computers. And when you sell 10 computers, every time you sell 10 computers, I give you X. Okay, so it's a fixed number. It's not I pay you by the hour. I don't pay you by the day. I pay you by the job. Can you get the job done? Okay. Uvilvad shelo yomar lo mechor b'Shabbos. The only things you have to make sure, you can't say, do this on Shabbos. I give you on Monday. I give you the business. I give you the merchandise. I say, look, I need you to sell me the computers. I didn't tell you to do it on Shabbos. I just told you, sell me computers. You tell me 10 computers, I give you X. Right? So then it's fine. Tanur shel-lekocho Yisrael mashkon me'eno Yehudi. Actually, sorry, let's go to the Mishnah Berurah before we read about the Tanur. It's a little bit different. Okay, look at the Mishnah Berurah in Chaf and Chaf Aleph. Im katzatz, the az amrinan adaiti the nafshe avi ve'eno kishlucho. If you set a price, or you sell 10 computers, I give you X. If you set that, then the person is working adaiti the nafshe of it, or you sell it by per computer. Every time you sell a computer, I give you $20, right? So now maybe they want to earn nothing. They could sell 0 computers. If they sell 0 computers. Okay, that was part of the deal also. I understood you might sell 0 computers. But I've also put you into a situation where I've incentivized you as my worker, because the more you sell, the more you make. And so every time you work, and even on Shabbos, that's because you wanted to make more. I didn't tell you have to make more. If you want to make more by working on Shabbos, that's your business. And therefore, you're not my shaliach when it comes to things on Shabbos. You're just, you're a salesman who is looking to make more and more. Chaf Aleph uvilvad v'chulei v'im yom hashuk hu b'Shabbos afilu b'stama aser have keilu amar mechor li b'Shabbos. Now this is something that I don't think we can relate to fully anymore because of the internet and how business is conducted. You can buy and sell on the internet and whatnot. If there was a Yom HaShuk, meaning there was a market day, and the only market day in that location, in that country, whatever it is Shabbos. I don't know if that was ever a thing that Saturdays was the big business day of the traders. I don't know.
Well, they have sometimes they have markets today.
Even here, the farmers market.
Farmers markets
on
Shabbos.
All the
So
farmers
here,
are-
I think he's implying not just that simply is that it's a the Yom HaShuk, right?
We get touched on this elsewhere. I forget.
On Saturday, yeah.
And it's like, they come to town on that day.
Right. There's a
Maybe
traveling
even-
market or
right,
something
it
like
may
that.
not even be every Shabbos. It may be-
When it comes, they come
The
on
Ritzvah
Shabbos.
does that.
Right.
Doesn't
So if there's a Yom HaShuk, let's say that the traveling market is coming into, it's coming, they put it out that they'll be there on Saturday. And you give the non-Jew the schora, the merchandise, and you know that they might come and buy it at this.
I believe you want to sell, you want to
Sell and buy, whatever. If it's known to everybody that that's Saturday and that's going to be the big day for buying and selling, then to do such an arrangement would be problematic because it's like it's even though you didn't say it, it's like saying you know because you also know when Saturday is going to be the market day, so you're basically telling them to go do this business on Shabbos. It's like saying sell this for me on Shabbos, even though I didn't use those words.
What if you're giving him perishable merchandise to sell, and the sell-by date happens to be Shabbos, and you've given him a huge amount? It's the same idea, isn't it? You're almost forcing him to unload a lot of it by Shabbos, right?
Certainly, if it's impossible to sell all of the merchandise without a Shabbos involved, yes.
Okay.
I would say that's, if you could get it all unloaded by Thursday or Friday, it's realistic. Then okay. But if you give it to the person Friday morning, and so they only have Friday and Saturday and it's going to expire, and it's not realistic to sell all the products and the merchandise on Friday, then yes, then it is like saying Mechor li b'Shabbos. Yeah. Okay. Let's go now to the case of the Tanur. Tanur shelakacho Yisrael mashkon. We're back up on top. Tanur shelakacho Yisrael mashkon me'eno Yehudi. An oven. And then again, it's not just an oven. This is like the business of owning a communal oven. People come and they want to bake their goods there. They want to cook their food there. So the Jew took from the non-Jew the tanur business, his tanur business as a mashkon, okay, as a security. So the non-Jew didn't pay back a loan yet. He was overdue on the loan or something like that. And so he takes a security and basically says, you owe me. This is part of the deal. The kibel alav ha'eno Yehudi shemasha yele schar hatanur la Yisrael beribis me'osaf. And the deal was that how is he going to end up paying him back? The Jew will the Jew will get the schar of the tanur business that the non-Jew runs. And it'll be like interest on the loan that was being, I guess that was not fulfilled, and in doing so fine. So he's getting the money over to the Jew. Meaning the money goes directly to the Jew in order to sort of repay, and it's obviously some sort of form of interest probably as well. Probably the interest is accruing. Okay, so now the problem is this business, when it's open on Shabbos, the money goes directly to me, the Jew. But it's not my business. So it's an interesting question. So he says here, Shulchan Aruch says, Mutter litol schar Shabbos. You're actually allowed to take the schar Shabbos. Usually I've told you 100 times already by now, you're not allowed to directly take payments on Shabbos or to make payments on Shabbos for things that happen solely on Shabbos. When it's part of a larger subset, the Havlah they talked about, then it's mutter, right? So if it's in a weekly payment or a multi-day payment that involves something that's not Shabbos, it's okay. But here it's mutter, lefishahu birishus ha'eno Yehudi, since it's in the possession, the business is in the possession of the non-Jew, ve'ein la Yisrael chaylek bo, and the Jew has no stake in this. V'gam ha'ein ha'Yisrael omer lo la'asok b'Shabbos. Also, I told you to pay me back. I didn't tell you to keep your business open on Shabbos. That's your business if you want to keep it open on Shabbos. Because the Eino Yehudi Kika Tarach Benafshe Tarach L'Kayim to know. Why does he want to keep it open on Shabbos? For his own sake. He wants to pay it off faster. He wants to fulfill the Tanai, the stipulations of our deal, and he wants to fulfill them quicker. And therefore, keeps the business open on Shabbos. I can then turn around and take directly the money, and there's no problem at all. Take a look at the Mishnah Berurah here, where he says, Chaf Beis muter lito, hainu afilu shelo behavla, even if it's not behavla. Yeah, so every day he comes to me at the end of the day and says, here's the money from today. Here's the money from today. And he comes to me on Saturday night on Motzei Shabbos and says, here's the money from today, from the Saturday business. All the business was done on Shabbos. All this cash was collected on Shabbos. And he's okay, I could take it, right? But I don't need to make any tonight. Why? Because when the money comes in, it's not mine. He just has an obligation at the end of the day to turn it over to me. But it has nothing to do, I didn't make that money on Shabbos. When he comes to me at the end of the day after Shabbos is over and hands me the money, that's because he owes me that money. It's not because it was, but it's a step removed. He made the money on Shabbos, and now he has to turn around and give me that money. It's a step removed, and therefore there is no problem even in just taking that directly.
So I got,
Who really owns the mashkon?
The mashkon is owned by the non-Jew. It's owned by the non-Jew for sure. I have a lien on it. I every time he gets $1, goes into his cash register. I can put my hand in the cash register and I can take it out. So that's what's happening here. It's really not. It's not mine until it's his. But once it's his, he made the money, he did the business, and then I can go into the register and take it out.
okay, I have a fast question. I'm learning Hebrew, and the word schar.
Schar means reward.
Reward in this, but it says bill. If I made the right thing, it says bill underneath it.
Bill?
I'm learning the Hebrew. I think I have to look at it. I go over it over.
Schar, I can mean bill. It could mean like a salary also. It can mean like a payment.
Mashkon, are you able to sell it in Israel? Is it like a pawn shop?
The mashkon? I don't think you can sell a mashkon. I don't think you can sell it. I think that you have rights to hold on to it. And then the question becomes, can you have access to the payros of the mashkon? Right? So if it's like a business like this, which produces money, or it's a field and it produces, fruit, can I take the payros? There, I think that they're like this. There, I believe you can. You can have access to the payros.
It doesn't make sense to sell it because you were taking something from somebody else in reference to whatever whatever transactions you're doing. If you do that, if you sell it, if it's his jacket and you sell it to me, he's going to start yelling at you for what you did, and I don't know nothing about it. So you can't do that. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, good. In the last case, let's do Vav very quickly, just so we finish it. This is straight out of the Mordechai. Mordechai was asked a shaila, and that's why it's a very specific case here. You're going to why suddenly they're going into a case about bread. I know we were just talking about a tanur before, but it's a very specific question. Im afu einam Yehudim betanuro shel Yisrael b'Shabbos. If a non-Jew bakes in his tanur, bakes bread in the tanur that is owned by a Jew on Shabbos, al korcho. Jew did not say this was okay. The non-Jew, maybe he has access to the business, or he opened the door on his own. He came in and he baked his bread on Shabbos without the permission, against the will of the Jewish owner. And but he is not a bad guy. He wants to pay for using the oven. And he tells the non-Jew. So what does he do? He bakes his bread, and then he gives a loaf to the Jew and says, "Here, thanks for the time, thanks for the fuel for the fire, and I really appreciate it. I know, sorry, you probably upset at me that you didn't tell me. You told me I can't use it, but I really needed to. Sorry." So you're not allowed to benefit from that bread. That was given as a payment for the bread that was solely baked. It was completely baked on Shabbos here. So again, bread here is, think of it as an example. This is not only with bread. What happens if a non-Jew does something on al korcho against the will of the Jewish owner, and now uses that to pay for what happened on Shabbos? Take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, Chaf Gimel. Im afu einam Yehudim, ayin bebach, sof simin, reish mem gimel, shekasav the Irish the lo afu bo rak b'Shabbos. We're talking about a situation where it was only baked on Shabbos. Al kain af shabal korcho afu bo. Therefore, even if against his will it's baked, right? Im yikabel haket hakikar notel schar Shabbos. Why is it problematic to take the loaf? That's called schar Shabbos. It's again a direct payment for something that happened on Shabbos without being in the larger subset that includes non-Shabbos business. Avalim afubo od shar yamim. But he says if, let's say, he did this 3 days in a row, Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, he comes in and he bakes bal korcho against the will of the Jewish owner, comes in and uses the oven. So mutter lekavna hen schar Shabbos gam kein havla. So then, if he wants to give me a loaf or two that were baked on Shabbos for payment for usage on 3 days, not just on Shabbos, that would be okay to use the bread, even though that bread was baked on Shabbos. Happens to be that loaf he gave me was baked on Shabbos. That's okay. And he says, "V'ayin beveir halacha." And that should be mutter, the 3-day thing I just mentioned, even if it was not against the Jewish owner's will. It's true that he, by giving him permission to have used the oven on Shabbos, that is usher, as we talked about in the beginning of Reish Mem Gimel. Remember, Tanur is an example of a business that is problematic. Even if it's a permissible arrangement because of Maris Ayin, people will think it's owned by the Jew. Even though, let's say, he arranged it in a way where it was permissible. Let's say I rent out the business, for 3 days. It's not my business. I sell the business for 3 days. Still can't do it because of Maris Ayin. So he says, "Mikol makom b'diavad ein le'esor scharo." After the fact, you don't need to, forbid the schar, the reward. Ha'isur vazeh hurak mishum Maris Ayin. The prohibition that's happening here is only because of Maris Ayin. The Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Zayin, as he wrote previously in Reish Mem Gimel a few simanim ago when we talked about this problem of Maris Ayin by the Tanur. It's interesting here, the Aruch HaShulchan disagrees with the Mishnah Berurah. Here he says the Mishnah Berurah is being too makil. He says that no, and it's too bad Simeon's not here. He would like this. He says, no, why should we, after the fact, allow you to keep the schar when you allow them? If the whole problem here was Maris Ayin, let's say in that 3-day example I gave you, I give him access Saturday, Sunday, Monday, here, bake whatever, and he pays me with bread that was baked on Saturday. So that should be. According to the Aruch HaShulchan, he says, I don't like that. He says, "V'yesh misha omer, da'af asa isur ein le'asor haschar b'diavad b'havla, kevin she'eno ela mishum Maris Ayin." He says, some people, and he quotes the Mishnah Berurah here, interesting, Aruch HaShulchan quotes the Mishnah Berurah here, that, some say that b'havla, it's okay, in a larger, subset, it's okay, even though I told you to use my business on Shabbos. After the fact, it's okay to keep the schar. I shouldn't have done that. Aruch HaShulchan paskins v'lo nehira. I don't agree. It doesn't appear to me to be the case. We only say that when it's a makom hefsei gadol, like the Rush. Remember, the Rush had said that you can only get involved in these situations, and when there's a great loss, then okay, you could keep the schar. Aval bazeh adarabba. Says on the contrary, roi lekonso. You should tell him, I'm sorry, you can't keep it. As a knas, as a penalty, you shouldn't have done this in the first place. And he says, v'chein ikar, and then Aruch HaShulchan says, I think that's right. In terms of psak halacha, he thinks that the Mishnah Berurah was being too lenient. Very interesting. Usually that is not the case. Usually everyone thinks the Mishnah Berurah is too machmir.
They're contemporaries?
Yes. I believe, this is an example of it, where I believe Aruch HaShulchan had access to what what the Chafetz Chaim had written first. But they were contemporaries, yes. They lived in different places, but that they were contemporaries. Lastly, Chaf Daled, that way we complete the siman. Mishnah Berurah writes, "V'nasnu lo pas lav dafka." Doesn't have to be bread. The huadinim nasnu lo maos. Could be that he gave him the money from the Saturday business. Asr lo lekabel mehem. He's not allowed to take it. The uvda haya bepas. As I mentioned, this was an uvda. It was a case that came before the Mordechai, and it was in bread. So that's why he wrote it. The Beis Yosef wrote it that way, and then when he comes to the Shulchan Aruch, so he wrote about the bread, but it's lav dafka bread.
They use bread.
Well, but it's also interesting that they don't. Israel is not an issue.
Yeah, that's also They're using
In
that.
general is not an issue.
So the presumption here is maybe the oven was Oh, depends. I don't know if do they light the oven anew every day? Probably they did.
And the kashrut issue, I mean, it's very interesting that
Yeah,
that's the
pas-
example they bring up.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Say what is Paspalter? I don't know. It's not Paspalter. It's not a bakery. He owns the bakery. The Jew owns the bakery or the.
They used to have these communal ovens.
Right,
That would
right.
sit somewhere in the house.
Right.
And so it was owned by the Jews who used it, and then the boy uses it on Shabbos, and then
Right.
bring you the bread. You use that bread.
Right. Right. That's interesting. Yeah. No. There's really no heter in that situation. There are a lot of pulas when it comes to pas Yisrael.
But
What makes something pas Yisrael, and even so, we allow pas palter. We allow baker's bread, meaning when it's not a personal situation, but when what's that big bread company, Hofer or something, whatever it is. You pick your big bread company, and they produce thousands of loaves of bread every day. It's fine, even if it's not pas Yisrael, because it's called pas palter. It's baker's bread. The whole problem with the pas Yisrael with pas was because of the bishum chasnus, because of intermarriage. They were concerned.
right.
So when a baker who makes 1,000 loaves and he sells 1,000 loaves, he doesn't know who's buying. This was not. There's no possibility that you could have a chasna emerge out of this. But you're right. Usually, bread was something that the Jewish community was very careful to bake to accept bread from an individual non-Jewish person who bakes it.
That's why I thought it was interesting.
Yeah,
That's
it's
exactly
interesting.
the example they bring up.
I didn't think about it. Yeah, I didn't think about it. It's a good question. All right, we're going to stop here. I have to take my son to